The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission is taking some of Australia's biggest chicken producers to court. It claims that ads declaring chickens are free to roam are misleading. The industry body has conceded it would be happy to abandon the term, but that won't be enough for animal activists. They've shown 7:30 some previously unreleased pictures revealing how densely packed chickens are on at least one farm. Mary Gearan reports.
This vision was taken covertly one night last year in a Victorian farm. According to Animals Australia, we're seeing a hidden, cruel side to chicken meat farming.
What we can see if you look along the shed is that the birds are really tightly packed and they have very little room to move, and so what they can do is sit in their litter, in their own excrement. They can move a metre one way to water, a metre the other way to food, push their way through other chickens and see other chickens around them get ill, have painful leg deformities.
It's images like these that animal welfare activists believe should bring an end to conventional chicken meat farming as we know it, an end to the density levels and the breeding of breast-heavy chickens.
It's unquestionable that they suffer. The bird is unable to engage in normal behaviour. Nearly 500 million animals a year. It's not only the number of animals, it's the acuteness of the suffering. It's a quantity of suffering which needs to be addressed by this society.
But some, like the director of the Animal Welfare Science Centre at the University of Melbourne, Professor Paul Hemsworth, don't believe conventional farming practices are cruel if they're followed correctly.
I think the system per se is probably less important than we think. I think what is very important, though, is the management practices.
Even when cameras are proudly allowed behind shed doors, the images might be enough to shock urban audiences not familiar with the reality of full-scale conventional chicken production, even though it's responsible for 7/8 of an industry now with a retail value of $4.5 billion. This whole debate has been sparked by a federal court case about 3 little words. Did some in the industry go too far and bring controversy upon their own heads by attaching the term free to roam to chickens grown just like these? If you saw chicken meat advertised as coming from chickens that were free to roam, what would you take that to mean?
I'd take it to mean that they're free-range chickens.
That they had space and, I guess, nice surroundings to be in.
That the chickens were free-range and it wasn't coming from some kind of a big chicken production factory.
In fact, the National Model Code of Practice allows for chickens that have been advertised as free to roam, that is, conventionally farmed chickens, to be grown exclusively in barns. That means with appropriate ventilation, they can reach densities of 40 kilograms per square metre. By the end of their lives, after about 5 weeks, that means you could have 20 chickens weighing 2 kilograms each in each square metre. The ACCC case is that this doesn't lead to a situation where animals are said to be free to roam.
Most animals are not protected by state animal protection statutes. In fact, they institutionalise widespread animal suffering.
Graham McEwen is on the Barristers Animal Welfare Panel that last year raised its concerns with the ACCC.
The problem with the free to roam is that it's misleading because it suggests meat chickens are raised in conditions where they are free to roam when in fact they are not. They are anything but. They are confined to an area mostly less than an A4 size sheet of paper.
The ACCC is taking action against Bayada Poultry and Barter Enterprises, which supply chicken under the Steggles brand, Turi Foods, supplying La Ionica, and the Australian Chicken Meat Federation. All declined our requests for interviews. But the head of the Australian Chicken Meat Federation, Dr Andreas Dubbs, has supplied a statement. He says the phrase free to roam was used because
it is simply one way we try to explain that meat chickens are not kept in cages and in fact are kept on the floor of large barns where they can move around freely, i.e. without any barriers or fences. The expression roam is often used rather than move because to us it describes well the somewhat random movement that one observes in chicken flocks.
Why go the extra step of saying no cages but also free to roam when in fact they're not free to roam, and the impression or the inference to be drawn is that it's something akin to servicing the animal's welfare, when plainly it's not.
Professor Paul Hemsworth has been approached by the industry to supply information in this case. He says European studies have examined how the amount of space given to the birds affects their health and morbidity.
Most of those studies indicate that space is having a relatively small influence on bird welfare. Management practices, for example, appear to be the most important factors affecting bird welfare. And so I think at the end of the day, better training and maybe auditing procedures are the best measures to safeguard welfare.
He says roaming, when it comes to these chickens, is a relative term.
Probably depends on your definition of what roaming means. I mean, these birds, studies that have been done suggest that they don't use a large amount of the space that's generally available for them in commercial conditions.
In his statement, Dr Dubs has admitted to 7:30 that
there is no point in fighting for this particular expression. If there are clearer words to convey this message, we will be happy to use those.
This federal court case might only change a few words, but animal activists want more.
I'd like to see these animals raised in conditions whereby they can engage in their natural behaviour. Ideally, they should be free range with indoor provision at night.
In other words, you'd actually like to see conventional farming abolished altogether?
Yes, you can do it with battery hens could be made into free-range production of eggs with housing indoor at night. There's nothing wrong with that.
Dr Dubs says this would be costly and difficult due to land use restrictions.
Thus, we would be facing not only higher prices and substantial shortages of chicken meat, but also significant social implications, with many chicken farmers losing their livelihood.
Activists are hoping change will come through consumer choices and leadership from retailers like Coles. It's recently expanded its RSPCA-approved line of chicken products from less densely packed sheds, but it's not planning to replace its other products just yet.
These production systems have to be developed, you have to put new sheds up, you have to get the birds, you have to grow them more slowly, all sorts of things. So it's not something you can just turn on overnight, even if you wanted to.
I think once the public realises the conditions in which these animals are raised, it will weigh in their choice as consumers. What we don't have at the moment is an informed consumer choice.
Both sides are claiming misinformation is clouding this debate. It remains to be seen if a court case will clear the air.
Mary Gearan reporting.